Salute is a program for and about men and women who have served our country. Our program includes news about the laws that affect veterans, information on benefits and services, and news from veterans organizations. And now, our host, Bob Peters.
Hello and welcome to Salute. My guest today is a Mr. Max Whitaker. He's part of the greatest generation ever, World War II veteran with the 735th Tank Battalion. I want to welcome you to the show, Max.
Thank you. Been a pleasure. Been a pleasure to be here, sir.
Well, don't call me sir. I got to call you sir. Tell me a little about yourself. Where were you born, and when did you go in the Army?
I was born in Indiana. I'm a Hoosier by heart, and of course Floridian by living. Two great states. I was introduced in the service from Muncie, Indiana, the first teenage group that was introduced. General McNair and General of the Army, Marshall, went to President Roosevelt and asked Roosevelt that we're going to do all these great things. Why can't we start getting the younger group involved? Well, Roosevelt thought that was a pretty good idea. But Roosevelt had promised the mothers that their sons would not go into battle until they were 21 years of age.
Really?
Really. And so he was on a spot too. Here we are, we're getting ready to really do business. And I'm in the group of teenagers out of Muncie Central High School. I graduated in 1942. That fall, I went to Ball State Teachers College, and I was having a science class, and Dr. Woodruff said, I have the following message from our provost, that we are to announce your names, and you will be introduced to the draft board in Muncie, Indiana. We had many of them from northern Indiana, southern Indiana in that group, and they were to report at the draft board of ours in Delaware County, Muncie, Indiana, in 1942. And it was in 43, actually, when I went in January the 27th, I believe it was.
So you went in at 17?
I was 18.
Just turned 18.
Well, I've been around 19, I guess. 18, 19.
Yeah.
But my first action, I was 21. June the 18th, 1944. On July the 6th, I was introduced to my first combat duty. And that was indirect firing in Normandy.
So they called you and you got drafted in, right?
Right.
And where did you take your basic?
Well, at Fort Lewis, Washington, the great Fort Lewis, out at one of the biggest forts in the whole military world. In fact, I read where Eisenhower had spent time in there, and General Marshall had spent time at Fort Lewis. It seemed to be our protector in the northwestern part of the United States, and they wanted to keep that up. It was a big fort. We had dirigible there, that we had that service. We had Grayfield, which was aircraft too. We had various units coming out of Alaska. We had one of the biggest hospitals in the military. It was a wonderful, wonderful training camp. And we had all kinds of facilities except tanks. When we first got out there, except tanks. We didn't have any tanks.
Well,
and they finally
when did you get your tank?
They finally brought our tanks, and we got rid of the broom handles.
Tell me a little bit about the broom handle. I mean, you were talking to me a little about it, but there's people watching this show right now that don't know about the broom handle.
Well, we didn't have tanks, and they wanted to show us, they wanted to start getting unity among ourselves. We had a tank commander, and we had a gunner and assistant gunner, and we had the assistant driver and the driver. We had 5 members of the Sherman tank. And these were new tanks, and I can see them yet. We had to go down and get them unloaded, and boy, we was all puffed up. They got us our new tanks. And so we trained our various types of maneuvering And we had, see, we were still fighting, I believe, in Africa, if I remember correctly. And we were going to be trained, perhaps we could go to Africa, we wasn't sure. And we were working out on different maneuvers, firepower. So that's pretty well what we did. And of course, they tried each one of us to be a driver or assistant driver of a tank. And I didn't like that heavy armor. That 33 tons is a lot to control.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I wanted to go home when this thing's over and have a healthy body. And I didn't stick my head out of that turret much either. I'm going to tell you that. That got to be serious stuff. See these guys getting knocked off left and right by paratroopers in Normandy. They were the 5th paratroop, and they were deadly with their rifles. They could drill you in a second, it seemed like. So I kept my head pretty well down in the tank. That's pretty well what we did. Basically, we were going to be tankers. Didn't realize I was going to be with the greatest tank man of all time, in my estimation, was General George Patton.
Yeah, you were telling me before a little couple stories about Patton. So you wind up now, you've done your training and you're headed towards Normandy, is that right?
Right. But we did take gunnery down at Yakima, Washington, before they took us down there, and we practiced on the gun range, and we got some exposure to what it was like. And then I got ahead of myself a little. We was on maneuvers in Oregon. And Oregon was a desert area. My land, they got black mold out there, molten like cinders. You'd come in after a day and all you could see is our white teeth, our white eyeballs. And we was black with that dust, that black dust out there. And we worked out there for, I think we was there for 6 weeks. And they had these sandbag deals that they throw a sandbag out of a plane and we knocked you out and all that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So they're staying on that. So basically, then they asked us if we wanted to go home before we went over. Oh, yeah, everybody wanted to go. And, but it took money.
Yeah.
So we didn't have too much money among us, so what we decided that we would play craps up on the second floor of the
The
barracks.
winner goes home.
So we're going to play, and when you got your money to go home, you were to get up, salute your brothers, and take off. So that's what we did. And I never missed that. I was the luckiest one guy in the world. I made $92 shooting crap, and I think I went in the game with $10 or $8, I forget. But anyway, I got to go home, and I took and laid them dice down with precision, turned around, saluted the guys, I'll see you. Then I went out that door. Some of them didn't get to go home. Yeah. That was sad, and they all deserved to go home, but they didn't get to go. But they, they won.
Luck of the draw. Yeah. Luck of the roll, huh?
Yeah, luck of the roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, now you're headed over there, right?
Yeah, we go back to Fort Lewis. Now they're going to bring us completely across the United States. We come through Indiana. This one kid said, "That's my grandpa's farm right over there. I wonder if I can get off this plane." And we said, "Sit down, soldier. You're going where it counts." We come into Fort Wayne, and they got us off there, and we did exercises. Fort Wayne, Indiana, northeastern part of Indiana. And then we moved on out to, went through, look at New York, them big, tall Empire State Building. This is wonderful. We're going up to Boston.
A little country boy, yeah.
Yeah, we were going up to Boston, Miles Standish. We went into Miles Standish, cold, man, it was cold. And we got in there, and they fed us some steak and pat us on the back and got our shots, and wasn't long, we was on the USS Henry Gibbons. We're going to go across the lake in the middle of January, I believe it was.
The big pond.
Oh, it's cold. I can do this. It was either we left the United States on Lincoln's birthday and arrived on Washington's birthday in Liverpool, England. And we run in, while we was going across the Atlantic there, we run into a wolf pack. And they had these blue lights. Everybody's all eyes and excited, you know, and what's going on? They've got a wolf pack out here waiting for us, 5 German submarines. And the waves are high, cold, seasick, and they were scared. And what happened was, pretty soon here comes the good old Navy along, you know. They started rolling them big barrels, and they go. And the back end of the ship would lift up. And we all finally got into Liverpool, and we met one of the British generals. And he praised us for coming over and so forth. We got on them little small trains, and I looked at we could barely get 2 of us in there and get our luggage, and it was really cramped. I couldn't believe how anybody could expect to do it. So we went down to Coventry area, and we went to Aubrey Park. Mrs. Newdigate was the family resident there at Aubrey Park, and it's one of the big, what is it? Not plantation, but anyway, it's, I can't remember it right now all these years, but anyway, the big Lancasters had a base there, British land, and they were flying in and out. And on Invasion Day, I knew something was up because they were sending them Lancasters out a dime a dozen. They were going out and coming back, going out and coming back. And then they announced it to the British people that the Allied Expeditionary Force was landing in France, our infantry departments and so forth. So I'll stop here now, and you want to ask me anything, go ahead.
No, it's your story. It's your show here. I mean, so we know you didn't go in on the initial wave.
We did not.
You went in like a month later, right?
Right.
And then you started going, right?
Yeah. Yes. And the first place I remember was the cathedral there that Red Buttons had made a show and showed him on the church steeple.
Oh yeah.
And we pulled right up by that church. And I remembered that from his show. Later on, I watched it on the TV and recognized the building there. Red Buttons made that. That's where we first lined our tanks up. And then they assigned us to we were going up on the front, relieved the 2nd Infantry Division and the 1st Infantry. Both of them had some of their divisions there on the front line. And we pulled in there and unloaded our tanks, and they said, never move. If you hear an aircraft, stay your ground, don't move. Well, I heard this sucker up there, and he dropped them candles out, lit up the whole area, and I didn't move, and here he comes. He threw dust over my feet, I don't remember that. And I said to myself, you dumb cluck, you better, when you hear that pressure's off of that engine, they're coming down, they're going to spray you. So that was my first really experience in combat. We were there for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Here comes the darndest noise. I looked around, there's these British guys. They're coming in there with long sticks. They had a fire built about 10 feet high. They were going to make their lunch or supper, and here come the artillery. Man, them Germans threw that artillery at us. And I got in the tank. I remember I wasn't going to get out. I wanted protection, so I did. Well, after that, I thought to myself, I don't know about these guys. We're going to get killed with messing around here with this. They wasn't no more concerned about that than nothing. They just out there, that big long stick with it looked like a wiener on it, and a big blaze of fire, and we're sitting over there holding our breaths, you know. Well, basically, I think about 3 or 4 days after that, they came through and said, you're going to go get your guns coaxed in, get your machine guns with your sights on your machine gun. So we did, went through an orchard, things seemed very peaceful, and started out in this open field, and I looked over there, and here was a guy, he had his rifle, it had been like this, and he was on his one knee with another knee back here. He didn't move. I said, hey, hey, look over there, that guy's not moving. He was the second, had that Indian Indian head patch, and he'd been there, and he was dead, and they'd never gotten him off the field. So then that tipped us off that the Germans were pretty close around, you know. And so as we moved along, I was standing there, and one of our infantry guys got out on the flank, was with us, and the famous Red Diamond 5th Infantry Division is what they were. Boy, were they good soldiers. They'd been in Ireland 3 or 4 years, and they were wonderful. And these guys, they held, we really respected the 5th Infantry. And our tank was attached to the 11th Regiment, K, L, and M Infantries. So we worked with the doughboys. And they got on our tanks. We was teaching them how to ride a tank and what to do. And they were just so tickled to get a ride on a tank. And we made a great combination. We really respected one another, you know, and I seen them infantry kids.
What towns did you go to? Or where, you know? Well,
we were around Caumont, Caumont. That'll be south, would be east. I'll come in and it's left, that would be east, west. It'll be west. And that would be where we were. I guess that's what.
So you were the Sherman tanks, right?
Right.
They were a lot smaller than the German tanks, were they not?
They were, although the Tiger Royal, it looked like a house when it was moving up there in the bulge, when I got into the bulge. And we looked over in the valley, and I said, do you see that building over there moving in the valley? And the guy, Shorty Klein, said, yeah, I do. Well, he said, it must be a tank. So we called for the P-47s, and they came in and knocked it out.
Oh, yeah? Yeah,
they knocked it out. And it was a big old Tiger Royal. And he was out there protecting them from the F-E-O-I-C gap, I believe it is. It was over there, and the Germans were going to cut us in two on that column coming down Avalanches on down to James in that area. And what was happening there is we run into some of them guys in there, and they were retreating. This was in the bulge, and they had no tanks, hardly at all, and they'd lost their armor, and it was out of gasoline. They were on the way back to Germany, and we were up on this, and I got introduced with the Pennzoil, P-E-N-N-Z-O-I-T, Pennzoil fuse, and that was a timing fuse. I used a broken knife as a screwdriver, and I turned that sucker about 20, and then we'd fire it. It gave us overhead coverage, like if you hit the top of a tree and get your spray going for the infantry. This was the same thing as this hitting a tree, but only this was out in the open, and we used that for about the first time. They held that off. Patton never used that until that I knew of. I can be corrected, of course. But that was unusual, that we could set our timer and get an overhead 20-foot spread of shrapnel coming down. And these guys were out there, and I said, look here, take this, look at what's going on here. And these guys were staggering around out there in the field. And it was interesting that they opened that new Pennzoil, P-E-N-Z-O-I-T fuse. It was the first time I ever used one of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And they actually began to use it. And
so the Battle of the Bulge, was it cold as they said it was there?
Oh, it was terrible. 10 degrees, trying to fight with poor infantry kids, and they were so cold. And some of them were, you know, they just had no, people of America, you owe these guys a lot. That infantry kid went out there, and all the thing he had was a carbine, and he went out and gave his life for us. I tell you, we cannot do too much. I see a guy standing on the street corner today, and if he's been an infantry guy, I have a lot of empathy in my heart for him. They were the kids that really took it on the chin. The rest of us, yeah, I had a tank. I didn't always have the most. I used to put on the inside of my tank this here. Dear Mother, I'm still alive. I'd take my fingernail. Dear Mother, I'm still alive. You know, so that was kind of a different world, that bulge deal. And
So Matt, tell me about the trip from Normandy, the distance you guys went in those tanks.
we went from it was 670 some miles, and then we got a new tank. Old Cutthroat, the first, gave out, so they give us a new Sherman with a 105 on it, and we drove that from Metz up into the Bulge, and we went from there on out to through Germany, all of Germany. I was at Buchenwald too, and that's a story within a story. And I went on to Czechoslovakia and met the Russian soldiers.
And this is tell us a little bit about this picture. This is your
that
crew.
picture there, we just came out of the Bulge, and we were trying to get a little rest because we were driven night and day in the Bulge. You just didn't get any rest hardly at all. And I learned to sleep sitting in this seat as a loader. I learned to sleep sitting up. I had it over, but them drivers that took them tanks, I don't see how they lasted. They would go as high as 3 and 4 days with no sleep.
Wow.
You know, they had an assistant guy as a deal. It was serious business. And when you stop and think about World War II, it takes 9 guys to supply this one guy up doing the fighting. So you're going to run into all these equations of, oh, I was in battle. Well, I'm not saying they wasn't. They could be, but I'm talking about line offensive fighting men, infantry and tanks. Seemed like I was with 8 different infantry divisions. Believe it, isn't that
That's
interesting?
a lot, yeah.
Because there's always tired. You can't blame a poor infantry kid. And they say, well, you're going to go here with the day. You're going to go here. See, we went from the 5th to the 26th Yankee Division, and then the Bulge there. And you're going to go when you come out of there with the 87th. They're a young outfit out of the state. They were a good outfit, young kids. And we went with them. And then they put me with old Gerald Miley. And Gerald Miley was a little short guy, 2-star Gerald, with the 17th Airborne. He needed some tanks to protect his headquarters. And so we got chosen. And he had to be a friend of Eisenhower, I'm pretty sure, because our first sergeant put us as missing in AWOL. Gopher Brown, our first sergeant, said, they're going to get it when they get back. See, that silly stuff. And so when he found out what we were doing is protecting Gerald Miley's 17th Airborne, he shut up right now. You know, big deal. Going to court martials too, you know, big deal.
Yeah.
But I'm going to summarize the stop here pretty well. I was in Saarlautern before we went into the Bulge, and I saw the first shopping mall in my life. We always had stores, you know.
Yeah.
And this was like we have today.
Really?
So when we took our tank right down, this sergeant, staff sergeant of the infantry, he said to us, I want you to blow that safe in there. We came to a bank. And there was a clothing store next, I remember that, and back this way was a meat market. And he was telling us that he was in charge of us. They always, depend on who your commander was. And this particular deal, we were with the branch of the 5th Infantry, and we took orders from him. He's a staff sergeant, he's the head of us. And he said, I want that safe in there blowed. And
You blew it.
we blew it, and money went all over hell and back. Excuse my language out there, folks, but that's the way it is. I'm telling you some things the way it is. And I'm not watering down everything either. Basically, what happened, he started picking this money, and the guy started lighting them and lighting their cigarettes, that big shot. I thought that was kind of funny, you know. So years later, I had a friend, he died, I went to see him, and his wife had a beautiful home. And she said, you know where that money came from? I said, no, I don't.
Yes, a safe.
You guess. And so I never said anything, you know. And he was smart. He took and evidently put it in his duffel bag, rolled it up, and got it out of there and sent it home. But you asked me today in front of somebody, I'm the biggest liar that ever walked.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you some things what it was like.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So I got 10 minutes still here. I told Mary I was going to come over, and if they want to hear about war, I thought I had my share of it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I know you did. And I'm glad you came. You know, so you did 3 years and 9 months or something, right?
Yeah. It was
Then
in
you
the
went
summer.
out. You went out of service and.
Then I went back to Muncie, Indiana, and I was just a little bit serene about what I was going to do, and I thought, do I need to get back into college room when I wasn't ready for it?
Yeah.
You know, so I went in with my father there, and he had a furniture store there in Muncie, Indiana, and I went to work in there and never. Then I met my wife, Mariana, and got married and had 2 daughters, and we worked to build our home, and she's a good contractor. She knows how to do it too. So we built our own home, and decided that when we retired, we'd come to Leesburg, Florida.
Well, I'm glad you came here. I'm glad you came to the show.
Yeah.
Because we're out of time.
I understand that. Yeah, I could talk and talk and talk.
So to all our veterans out there, active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time. We are now entering our 3rd year salute here at Lakefront TV. We've had many great guests and veterans organizations share their stories with us. We'd like to hear from you too. If you're a veteran or a veterans organization, Lake Sumter counties, please give us a call. Lakefront TV can be seen all over Lake County and the villages and worldwide at lakefronttv.com.